teachers at Reddit. How have you secretly rewarded or punished a student? I have a student this year who makes my life hell. She is blatantly disrespectful, nasty to me and classmates, and thinks I'm her personal waitress. Part of this is that every day she tries to hand me her work when I'm running around the room getting class started, but she does it in this manner that implies I'm her maid. I tell her every day to get up and put it in the turn-in box like everyone else. She itches and whines until some other classmate does it for her. Thursday she left her extra credit, 2 points on her test, not that much, on her desk like it was my job to go get it after class. I threw it away. I'm not sure this is punishment as much as expecting her to follow directions, but I can't honestly say I would have done the same to other students. Small, petty justice, but I did it nonetheless. I teach a high school elective course, aka not as important as English or math, and I had a class that was 23 boys and 2 girls. If you are a teacher, you know this is a terrible setup. Teenage boys are definitely pack animals and are constantly in a struggle to establish their hierarchy, especially if females are limited. Anyways, these guys were a constant ball of energy and were always doing stupid guy stuff. They went through a phase where they cup checked each other. This went on for weeks. Little Johnny in the back would walk up to sharpen his pencil. Bam. Cup check. So one day in class on student, I'll call him Travis, asked to go to the restroom. I gave him the pass and sent him on his way. The rest of the class was quietly working when another boy in the back yelled out, "Oh my god. Travis just texted me a picture of his balls." Now I know how these guys have acted all semester, and I also know the zero tolerance mess that school systems deal with. I knew this could end up very badly if it was dealt with by administration. Immediately got the kid to delete the text, calmed the riotous laughter going on, and somehow managed to get them all back on task. But Travis wasn't back yet, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let him smugly get away with this. So I called his mom and had her on hold. Told her that Travis had done something that I did not approve of, but I felt it best if he would explain his actions to her instead of me. On a side note, I teach animal anatomy, so terms like testicle, scrotum, etc. are common vocabulary. So in walks Travis with a seed-eating grin on his face. He thinks he has succeeded until I casually look up from my desk and let him know his mom is on the phone. There in front of the entire class he had to explain that he had just taken a picture of his testicles and sent it via text to his buddy in class. You could literally hear mom screaming through the phone. Once he finished, I spoke with her and told her that I felt the situation would be best handled by her and thanked her for her time. That day, I had a kid who was working a job late into the night in order to help his family while trying to finish his senior year in high school. His dad had been laid off and his mother was disabled, so they were barely making it. He told me that he worked late into the night and he had to miss days of school, too. He did the best he could in my class but just couldn't pass after missing so much class. He was a senior and a good kid who needed my English class to pass. Figuring that the kid's life was already hard enough, and that his family was struggling enough, I secretly added some points to assignments he hadn't done so that his final grade went from a 50% to a 61%, just enough to pass and graduate. I don't like giving away grades, and I never told him. He just thought he had passed. I used to always show up late for my 10th grade science class. One day, we had a little chapter review quiz at the start of class, and naturally, I am a minute or two late. So I walk over to my desk, and the teacher hands me my quiz. It's all really advanced questions comprised of polysyllabic biology jargon that I've never seen. Question after question is material that I'm pretty confident we have never ever covered in the class. After about 2 minutes, I look up to see how everyone else is doing on their quiz. Everybody was watching me, and when I looked up, they all started laughing. The teacher had printed up a single fake quiz with super complicated biology questions just to duck with whatever kid ended up showing up last to the quiz. Mrs. Cohen, you were a fun teacher. Thumbs up. Edit. Since a lot of people asked. This was at Bard High School in Manhattan. I assigned a very high point value project to my HSChem class. Bright, popular student turned in a half-ass effort. I knew she knew that she half-assed it. And I knew she had a conscience. So I handed her my gradebook and told her to fill in her own grade. I said whatever you write will be your grade. No questions asked. It was fun watching her squirm for 10 minutes, begging me to make the choice for her. A local music store was going out of business where a lot of students rented band orchestra instruments. I had a student who has a serious lifelong disability, but she still participated in many things and is an outstanding student and person in general. She went through some scary medical things, but never complains, and is so genuinely happy. Her family is blue collar hardworking, but I knew her medical expenses were a constant in her family's life. The store was offering a discount, plus their normal rent-to-own discount, for students who had instruments to outright purchase them before they closed for good. I contacted them and they let me pay the remaining cost of her instrument and kept my identity a secret. Wow. I was beat after a day of Halloween fun at work. 4th graders in full costume at 8:15 am. Yikes, and it is crazy to see what I woke up to now. Just for your information, I am a lady music teacher. Thank you also for the gold. I am glad so many people had wonderful experiences in music. My minus are is to please support and demand your local school district fund music and art other creative programs properly due to unfunded mandates, funding disparities, and them seeing how special areas do not fit neatly into common core evaluations. Programs available for students are continually at risk. I took a kid's phone because he was playing Clash of Clans and then lost a bunch of battles for him. If a student can dance on an essay where they obviously have no idea what they're talking about, I'll give them some credit for the attempt. For example, I ask you to discuss 3 major causes of the French Revolution, causes we covered in class. You don't know them, but, in the essay, you try to extrapolate some possible causes using information you do know or attempt to morph the question into a topic you're prepared to discuss. I call that dancing, because a good performance can be moving, and a poor performance is laughable. I've gone as high as 75% credit for a good dance. IMHO. It demonstrates a better mastery of the material than actually parroting back what I've been talking about for the last 4 weeks. Otto. If you pull any of that shows up on 9gag. Like give this drawing of some stupid meme an A or whatever. I will burn your ass for the rest of the semester. Do so much as omit a semicolon. And it's half credit at best. When I am doing final grades, if a good student is really close to a higher grade, I round it up. If they've misbehaved, it stays where it is. I was the student in this case. At the very start of 10th grade, my mother was in a motorcycle accident where she should have died. Ended up in ICU, various hospitals, etc. for over a year. Meanwhile, I have arthritis, so I get sick easily. Psoriatic, genetic. During the 3rd term, I was sick for a week, on top of already being behind from getting 2 hours a night to work on assignments because I went to visit my mom daily. I go to my European history teacher to explain it, and he immediately dismissed all my missing homework assignments for the term because he knew I was an excellent student who didn't deserve a poor grade for this. His words, not mine. I owe that man my 1B+ from that year, and he's been a major reason that I'm so motivated to do well for the rest of my high school career, along with my mom still being around. I asked my professor if I could turn in a report by the end of the day instead of during class time. Since I wasn't finished, he said it was okay, no problem. He ended up grading harsher than other students, and I'm convinced it's because I turned it in late. I've added points to students who were on the cusp of failing or would get letter grade improvements. If they were behaviorally or socially good people, I feel it's worth rewarding people who try hard or have good character as much as it is worth rewarding content. Was teaching at a non-public special education school designed primarily for non-compliance emotionally disturbed behavioral issue students. TLDR. Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. The worst of the worst inner city gangbangers etc. Noticeable lack of adamantium skeletons. A young man, we'll call him Dallant, accidentally reveals an interest in Shakespeare during a literature class. I was in the midst of overacting the many roles of Macbeth to an absolutely ridiculous degree in the hopes of snatching some semblance of attention. Over the course of the week, the students get progressively more and more involved, become actually interested in the story as I explain the horrific war crimes committed, and discuss the themes of violence and manipulation. Every young man in that classroom nodded their heads when we talked about Lady Macbeth's duckery. A chorus of yup and yeah. None of the students had volunteered to read any of the parts, which was expected. My solution was to act out each part as if my audience were in love with the show. The kids would either volunteer to read or they would suffer the 1,000 deaths of having to endure me reading. After a solid 30 minutes of performing, I arrived at the conclusion of the class as well as the play, with bated breath. Me reading Macbeth, let fall thy blade on vulnerable crests. I bear a charmed life, which must not yield to one of woman born. Silence. And just as I began to explain Macduff's confrontation and what it might mean to Macbeth, Dallant shot up to his feet, pointed a finger at me and without his book shouted, "Tell thee, Macduff was from his mother's womb, untimely ripped. OMG, them feels." I was an awkward lump. I applauded the class and the young man. Later, during the student's IEP, individual education plan, it's basically a meeting where old people in the field of education decide what your teenage years should look like. I filed the student as advanced in language arts, recommending him for the AP literature class at the school he was transferring to. It caused a bit of a disturbance. Unbeknownst to me, Dallant was having trouble in his other classes. He didn't understand his teachers. He didn't understand nor complete his homework. He showed a general confusion with the common high school protocol. My observation was that this was a behavioral issue, that the material was not challenging and so it was not worth his time. In any case, I left my report and recommendation that he be transferred to the highest level reading course. The kid was interested enough in the reading of Macbeth to memorize a partial line and sit in waiting, given the average behavior and interest of his peers. This stuck out to me. I dunno. Felt important. Approximately 5 months later I received an envelope in the mail. It was from Dallant Smith, and a home address that I recognized from when he first got out of juvie. Inside the envelope was an invitation to the 2012 graduation ceremony of the high school he transitioned to. It warmed my heart, made me feel good. I won't lie, it was always great to hear the rare success stories of these kids. The ones where they were able to evade the system long enough to become an adult. Upon closer investigation of the card I found that my information was filled out under Guardian. And below it all, he wrote, "I will try the last. Before my body, I throw my warlike shield. Lay on, Macduff. And be him that first cries hold. Enough." Not sure if that fits best with the up's request, but in my heart it's the greatest thing I have ever been a part of. Edit. Drunk spelling grammar. Sorry guys, it was Friday night. I was knee deep in a fantastic Cabernet. Well, a second one. I'm actually surprised there were only 2 glaring mistakes in the typing. It made sense in my head, but I wouldn't have been surprised to find my post just a long stream of S. DLKJFS. LDKFJSL. DKFJOIFSU, and then I told I.NUSDF. Replying to questions now. Also, obligatory don't gold this. Donate to charity, give to homeless, buy weed etc. comment. But thanks. Edit again. That school was a treasure trove of stories. Some were inspiring and great like this one. Most were not, but they were pretty crazy nonetheless. Students swashbuckling with used syringes they picked up off the street? Check. Parents using 11-year-old kids to peddle drugs and for prostitution that CPS practically witnessed a dozen times but did nothing about? Check. Rival gang hopping the fence and storming the school to kill a student, but instead solving things with a choreographed dance? Damn sharks. Obligatory. I'm not a teacher, but back in 4th grade I was yelling swear words in class. Little idiot me thought swearing was cool and all that, and got the teacher real mad. He then dragged me to the office and began lecturing me, half pissed off. A few moments in, another teacher who liked me asked him if she could take over and handle the problem for him. And so I went with her afterwards. After a simple "don't do this again." Okay, she let me play RuneScape on her computer for the rest of the period. I also helped her create an account. Gave a kid a box of chocolate frogs sugar mice for calling out that ministry itch in a magazine. I never graded based on anything other than academics. That is to say, the assignments, quizzes, and tests. No adding points for good kids or taking away points from bad kids. I tried to be as unbiased as possible. I didn't think it was right to give a student a judgment of their academic abilities based on non-academic things. I also don't factor in class participation. It feels too arbitrary. And while I do think it's crucial to get kids to participate, I just don't think taking a portion of their grade hostage is the proper way. Of course, I taught grade schoolers. I'd probably have a different opinion if I was dealing with high school kids. It's only a little thing, but when I'm marking assignments, if I can see that a kid has really tried, I'll write them a little note like, "Great effort, Michael. I can really see your algebra skills developing. You have come a long way since I started teaching you, and I know you're going to get a great grade at the end of the year if you keep working this hard." I think there's something really nice about a written note. I do this especially for the quiet kids who might not want me to draw attention to them in class, but it's my way of saying I do see you working hard even though you think you are invisible. I never fudge grades one way or the other. However, when I know a student has really put in the effort and is genuinely trying, I'm more lenient with due dates, within reason. I'd rather they learn the lesson and be able to apply it later than meet a deadline. I was the student, and the secret kindness was from my guidance counselor, not a teacher. I skipped class a good bit in my senior year, but I was a huge goody two-shoes. It wasn't a rebellion thing, just trying to handle some pretty heavy life circumstances at the time. I never went far, and most of it was just trying to stay afloat in schoolwork. I got caught skipping class one of those times. I was hiding in the school auditorium studying for my math exam later that day while my friend worked in the tech booth. This was the second time I'd been caught skipping that week, and since I was a girl and my friend was a dude, the teachers who caught us were sure we were up to something a little more devious than studying. They made very clear that I was in huge trouble, and that my guidance counselor, who knew me and what was going on in my life quite well, be called. When she came in, she looked terrifying and told me I would have to come to her office because this was such a big offense, and told the other teachers that I'd be punished to the fullest extent. I was appropriately shaking in my little goody two-shoes boots, but when we got to her office, she dropped what was apparently just an angry act, and quietly told me that I could stay in her office and finish studying for that math exam for the rest of the period, and essentially just kept watch for me the whole time. That moment really stuck with me, and the rest of her kindness throughout all of high school absolutely got me through a few of the attest years of my life. Kids who misbehave aren't always duck-ups. Man, great teachers and mentors can keep sight of that and really make a difference. The all-powerful participation portion of the grade can make or break that day. This one day I was teaching Reddit and I downvoted a student for reposting. Not a teacher but an occupational therapist that works in an elementary school. Had a guess how many Legos contests at the end of the year. This kiddo just has a sad life and always tells me how his siblings were happier before he was born. This is a sweet kid, not a mean bone in his body. Guess who won the Legos? A friend is a teacher in an area where there are a lot of Indians from India. The parents normally come in feeling extraordinarily entitled and yelling at the teacher for having their kid receive a B rather than a A. He won't budge because, well, grades are grades. Because of that, he grades students with parents that are nicer to him with a tad bit more favor. Punishment. I pretend to randomly pick an essay from the pile and read a portion to the class. What I actually do is showcase a selection of the worst writing and poorest thinking so that the lazy students are ridiculed before their classmates. Works like a charm, because the shame makes them do better next time. I guarantee you will see the results of it. Edit. Let me clarify this. I've used this tactic with college students who are required and expected to know beyond the basics. Also, I consider that it would also work fine for high school students. It baffles me to read how some people feel threatened and terrified by something like this, labeling it as politically incorrect, and so, to be honest, I think it is highly hypocritical to condemn a method of this kind also which is strictly focused on learning and applying principles that are required by the curriculum also in the name of protecting the fragile and quasi-divine integrity of the students' feelings. When outside of the classroom 14-year-old girls take nude selfies and get wasted, without any remorse for publishing it on Twitter or Facebook. I taught high school. This one kid was always in trouble, always on disciplinary probation, not an ounce of sense. During the last period of the day, The kid walked in with a soda can, which was strange because lunch was already over a few hours ago. He was obviously dipping. I knew it and he knew I knew. I picked up the can and acted like I was accidentally about to take a drink. He turned pale. Then I apologized and said, "Sorry, all yours," down the hatch, and waited for him to guzzle it. He guzzled it, then asked if he could go to the restroom to retch. Better than being suspended for possessing tobacco. I took a kid's phone and texted his mom saying, "I love you, and I think I am old enough for more responsibility. Can I start mowing the lawn? Or wash the dishes or something to help you out?" The kid was 12 and hates me to this day. While making seating charts, thinking, it would be quite a shame if I sat my least favorite kid under the Arctic AC blast. Yasari. Quite a shame. Not a teacher, but a student. I switched majors in college as a junior from business to geography. I had taken all the general ed classes, and I was in a hurry to learn something that would have something to do with some kind of a career. I took all geography classes in one semester, including intro mapping classes and senior level GIS courses. My advisor did bureaucratic magic to get me past prerequisites. I had one professor who taught 2 of my top level classes. I came in with no previous experience in the software we used or any of the general knowledge required for the class. I had my nose to the grindstone and put in more effort than I ever had in college. In 3 weeks my prof had me tutoring other students who weren't doing well in the class. The very first day of class I wrote down the day and time for the final exam. Fast forward to the end of the semester, I am sitting at an 88% with complete confidence in my ability to get an A. I show up for the final, and it turns out I wrote down the wrong time for the final, showing up for it at the end time, not the start. I go to the professor's office to plead my case, hoping he'll let me take the final. He tells me I won't learn anything from this if he lets me take it, but he knows I put the effort into the class and my final grade will reflect that. Grades come in, and I got a 90% in the class. I needed one of those scientific calculators for a class exam, but my family couldn't afford one. My teacher took me to his office and handed me a brand new one in a box. He said, "I'd appreciate if you didn't tell anyone in class about this." Nearly cried. I was only about 13. I think I have it back to him like 5 years later, as I wouldn't be using it again, and told him to pass it on the next kid. Ta Mr. C. When I was in 9th grade, I had a principal named Dr. Ridgway. My life was just a big ball of crap. To be honest, I was bullied, living in a hooker motel. It was trashy, that we couldn't afford, and I self-harmed. Dr. Ridgway went above and beyond for me. She obviously had to get the bullies, and she did. Anytime I felt the urge to self-harm, in school, I was in her office. She would let me sit outside the building and listen to music so I could calm down. And if it got too bad, I was allowed to call mom and go home. No questions asked. The most important thing she did, she asked the people who donated a lot of money to the school to help pay for us to live in a motel for another week. She did that 3 times till we got on our feet to live in an apartment. I've never had a teacher school worker mean so much to me. I need to go visit her soon. This isn't in secret, but I just wanted to share about my 8th grade algebra teacher. He literally saved my life. I was very depressed, suicidal at the end of my senior year. My class went on a Europe trip, and about halfway through he noticed that I wasn't doing well. He came up to me and told me that he noticed and I am capable of anything. That is the first time anyone has told me that. Because of him I am doing well in my life. 2 years ago he suddenly passed away at a very young age, around 30. He was such an inspirational teacher and will always be missed. In my high school our report cards only listed the letter value and not any pluses or minuses. One teacher would announce any plus in class after the reports came out. She didn't announce your letter grade, just the plus. One term she gave me a minus. I had a D. I was struggling in the class and had even gotten some tutoring, so she knew I was trying and had given me a little boost by not giving me a failing grade, but made it clear I had to push even harder. I managed to improve and passed the class with a B. An F may have made me give up on the class. Not a teacher, but I will shout out to him. I had a research seminar class in high school. My father died from AIDS complications at the start of my senior year. Couldn't pull my it together for that class but tried. I ended up with a C+ despite knowingly missing even a passing mark. That was some 17 years ago. I eventually went on to become an emergency department nurse. There have been a handful of cases I directly saved someone's life. If that teacher had not passed me, I would not have been placed in that role. For those people,